All right, here we are, Darrell Davis Live. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We have a lot to report on, but I want to start by thanking those of you who tune in, those of you who have spread the word, that are sharing these lives on your feeds. I want to remind people right at the top that this is an extension of our movement, which exists throughout the Hudson Valley. We've been focusing mostly on the Peekskill Housing Authority and empowering our community in the political arena. But I've gotten calls and text messages from people all up and down the Hudson Valley, as far away as Kingston, who are tuning in. Their friends and families are emailing us and they have questions. So I want to tell you that if you have a question, put it in the comment section. We have people here. Tiana Cowan, who's been doing the technical, and CFJ member Brittany's here. And just put your question in the comment, they'll yell it out and we'll do it. All right, let me just start right off the bat with a follow-up. I have to be reminded that people are listening outside of Peekskill. And so though we are trying to save the Peekskill Housing Authority residents from mass eviction, because your politicians, black and white, have taken money from developers, and in return they get these tax breaks, they get these multi-million-dollar profitable deals like the Kiley Center. And by the way, let me thank the sister. I don't want to call your name because maybe you don't want me to call your name, but someone from the Corney family contacted me and thanked me. That meant a lot to me because, as you know, we're trying to save the Kiley Center. All right, that is our community center. We got that built. Recently, our kids have been put out in the streets while immigrants and migrants are in our community center. And so it's causing, I know this is directly related. I received another complaint about police abuse against one of our youth. I received that phone call just a few days ago. This is one of many that are just seem to be flooding in recently. Now, I know that there are police officers who should not be police officers. Peekskill has a history of hiring police officers from Newburgh and New York City who have been in trouble previously. And they bring them into Peekskill and unleash them on our community. We had a case years ago where a police officer brutalized someone in our community bad. This young man could have died. Committee for Justice, March, picketed. We ran him out of the community. He went and got hired in a neighboring community. And this cop chased a kid onto his porch and beat him on his porch. But this was a white kid. So his career was pretty much over at that point. So these brutal cops, and I said this to my son who's been working in the airports as a career, and I said, you won't see the cops they put in our community around the United Nations, because they're not going to risk them brutalizing some African dignitary. They're only in our community, and that's one of the biggest problems with police brutality. They unleash these cops in our communities for the most part. You don't see them, if you go to Grand Central Station and, you're lost. These cops are polite, they'll help you, they'll give you directions, but those cops are not put in our communities. And so police brutality is on the rise in Peekskill. I think it's directly related to the fact that we no longer have a community center. The Kiley Center now belongs to another group of people who just got here. And they're not my enemy. But my priority is my community. These are the kids of people who fought for this country, who built this country, and you're abandoning them to the streets again. And so I have to remember to tell people who Mayor McKenzie is and Councilman Rob Scott, who we're going to talk about, because people are listening outside of Peekskill, and I have to be mindful of that. So we're going to be taking on the issue of police brutality in Peekskill. We're putting together a committee within the Committee for Justice to head that up, to meet with parents and kids who are having these problems, and we're going to deal with it. Now, I will say that as I'm speaking right now, we do have the attention of our congressman, who I've met with several times. We had phone conferences. This congressman has written letters in support of our community. Mike Lawler, Oh man, isn't he a Republican? Oh man, you traitor. Listen. Tell me how dysfunctional it is for the Democratic Party in Westchester to be trying to mass evict my community, for the Democratic Party in Westchester to turn over our community center and abandon our kids to the streets and more interaction with police. Tell me how dysfunctional it would be for me to be escorted out of my job by Democratic Party controlled politicians accused of incompetence, suspended for 10 months only because they don't want me fighting against the Kylie conversion. How dysfunctional would it be for me to still be all right with the Democratic Party? How dysfunctional is it for us as a black community, knowing that these people are bullying us at the Housing Authority? These are commissioners that are appointed by Peekskill Mayor Vivian McKenzie. Now I have to say this because, you know, Peekskill is a small city, and we have a strong city manager form of government, meaning the city manager runs the city on a day-to-day basis. But since former Peekskill Mayor Mary Foster was elected 12 years ago, whatever it was, she started the practice of the part-time mayor of Peekskill running the city on a full-time basis. Now these folks are not qualified for that. They don't have degrees. They're not attorneys. They don't have degrees in urban management. But what they're doing is championing the cause of corporations. In other words, they're not looking out for our interests anymore. When was the last time you found an apartment in Peekskill that you can afford? That's the job of the people you're voting for. Are they doing that? No, they're not doing that. Instead, they're giving tax rebates and deals they're making backroom deals with real estate interests like Wilder Bolter, who they I don't know how this guy, he gave all this money, this company gave all this money to these politicians, to community people, and ends up with this contract for the Kylie Center to turn it into Boys and Girls Club. Those things have to go out to bid. Did this go out to bid? I'm told it did. But what a coincidence that he ended up getting the contract over everybody else. These things are being looked at as we speak. I'm in touch with the U.S. Attorney, Southern District. That's part of the Department of Justice. Congressman Mike Lawler is writing a follow-up letter to them, demanding that they look into these decades of disenfranchising, undermining our community. What do I mean by that? Well, some years ago, under former mayor, Democratic Mayor Mary Foster, I was asked by the tenants of Bowman Towers to come there and help them set up a tenant association. Before I got to Bowman, I got a phone call. D, don't come. There's 4 police cars here. We were told if you set foot on the property, you're going to be arrested. Now, what kind of Nazi stuff is that? And by the way, I have photos. They took pictures. Hey, we in the age of the cell phone. They took pictures and sent it to me, and I saw all of these cops waiting for me. And what crime? Other than they don't want the Bowman Towers area organized, which is one of the main reasons that they're going after the Kylie Center. If you don't have a base of operation, if you don't have a place to meet, that is the first stage in displacing you. Because, for example, when COVID hit, and I know this is a review for some of y'all, but some people need to hear things more than once, but I'm also talking to new listeners, and I'm very excited and happy about that. And so when COVID hit, people lost their jobs everywhere, including housing authority residents. And so when the restrictions were relaxed and people went back to work, they found themselves months behind in their rent. And so we went to the housing authority for repayment plans, and they told us no. They told us you have to have the whole $15,000 or we're evicting you. Now that's not what public housing is about. It's never been about that. Public housing is a government act of compassion. You know, 2 words you rarely hear anymore in the same sentence. And so they had designed things in the Peekskill Housing Authority to mass evict. Even when Governor Hochul put a moratorium in place against evictions, the Peekskill Housing Authority was still sending letters of eviction to people to start the process. And so where does this come from? This comes from Peekskill Mayor Vivian McKenzie, appointing people to the Housing Authority Board to put these policies in place because she took money from some of these developers. And it's not just her, and I'm not accusing her of doing anything that these other politicians aren't doing. But you're a black woman. And as a black woman, you have a bigger responsibility, because if we're truly honoring Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman and Angela Davis and all of that, you have a responsibility. This is why black people vote for you, to look out for our interests. And not only have you not looked out for our interests, you've attacked us. You've attacked our community. I've had people come to me who've never been in court, crying. Mr. Davis, I was $5 short on my rent. They refused to take all my rent. That's not what public housing is about. And so they put all these things in place to make it difficult for you to either pay your rent or to catch up. And that's intentional. The rest of the country is going overboard trying to stop evictions. Only Peekskill is going overboard to try to evict people. And you're evicting children more than anybody. The lack of compassion, the ruthlessness of the Peekskill administration is insane. Now, I just got back from Albany, and I was in Albany for the week at a conference, and one of the things we dealt with was evictions. And let me tell you, to hear the stories, one of the speakers was a sheriff from a neighboring county who talked about serving evictions. And this is what he said. And Mayor McKenzie and Councilman Huzitz and whatever, you need to hear this. This police officer, this sheriff got up and said, and he was telling people who work in the industry that, in that field, you show up, you're in your uniform. Some people freak out. Some people have nervous breakdowns. This is what he witnessed. Being evicted, being dragged into court is traumatizing. And yet, this is the policy. This is the goal of the Peekskill administration. He told the story of sitting down with one woman who said, I can't face my husband. He doesn't know. He doesn't know that this is happening. I can't face my kids. And he thought she was drinking coffee. Turned out she was drinking antifreeze. There was another case where marshals showed up to evict somebody and knocking on the door, and they looked at the window. This guy's hanging from a rope. And so we're not animals. We are human beings with feelings. Have some compassion. There's agencies across the country and throughout Westchester County that will help pay back rent. Westchester County government has money for back rent. Week after week, I call them. Did the Peekskill Housing Authority apply for any of that money? No. 2 weeks later, I called the county. Did the Peekskill Housing Authority apply for that money? No. And so what we got going on, you have the county willing to pay back rent. You have the state under the ERAP program willing to pay back rent. And the housing authority, the only reason they apply for it is because we made them do it. They don't want the rent, they want the building. And so we have to put this problem right where it belongs, on the steps of the mayor and members of the Peekskill City Council who are Democrats. Well, Daryl, I hope you understand. I met with Mayor McKenzie, with Councilman Rob Scott, and Riley, Councilwoman Riley, with Sister Brittany from the Committee for Justice. We met with them, and we thought we had a commitment, because of all of the shenanigans, that they would give everybody a repayment plan who wanted one. Didn't happen. And so I go to the council meeting a few months ago to stand. Mayor McKenzie called the cops on me. And I was shocked. I was shocked because I've been coming to City Hall for 40 years. I have a certain stature. I have a certain voice. I go to a council meeting in Mount Vernon. Council members stand up and shake my hand as I walk past. I go to a county legislators board. They call my name out from the floor. I go to my hometown council meeting. They call the cops. What is wrong with this picture? Who are you representing? Give the money back. And so I try to say these things, and she called the police on me. Now let's talk about that. Well, Daryl, the rule says that you can only talk about what we put on the agenda. Let's talk about that anti-black rule for a minute. Again, this started under Tea Party former Peekskill Mayor Mary Foster, who, by the way, was Tea Party Republican, should not have been allowed to run as a Democrat. But in Peekskill, there's not much difference. And so when they were trying to get rid of public housing then in Peekskill, we had a housing director named Harold Phipps, who women were complaining was letting themselves into their apartments and sexually harassing them. And we were also fighting to get rid of him. We were also fighting for our right to exist. We were also fighting to save the Kiley Center again. Save the jobs of the staff, the people we grew up with who know us. And so what Mary Foster and Vivian McKenzie was on the council at the time, changed the rules. From now on, you can only talk about what we put on the agenda. Now, this is what they did with their anti-black rule. A normal agenda for a city council meeting at that time was about 10 items on the agenda. Suddenly, there was 25 and 30 items like, what to do if a cat gets caught in a tree. So they made us wait for hours. They also brought in 30 cops to stand in the back of the room. And if you violated that rule, which obviously I did a few times, I was taken out in cuffs. That was an attack on free speech. But it was also more so an attack on black people to be participants. So they made us wait for hours while they went through this agenda. And if you tried to talk about something that wasn't on the agenda, and they never put the Kiley Center on the agenda, they never put mass evictions on the agenda, they never put human rights on the agenda. Some people were there paying babysitters to come to this council meeting and be heard, and they knew all of this. And there were other times where we waited hours, and this mayor and council got up and walked out on a room full of black people. Mayor Vivian McKenzie was part of that. And so when I go to a council meeting and I want to speak, why should I have to wait to the end of the meeting? You're getting paid to be there, I'm not. Some people are paying babysitters. You're getting paid. It's wrong, and it's an anti-black rule, and you need to get rid of it. Beyond that, it's unconstitutional. We wrote to the Committee on Open Government and asked them if they can do this, and here was their written response. The mayor and council has a right to let you speak, or they have a right to say no citizens can speak. But if they let you speak, they cannot tell you what you can talk about. And yet, this anti-black rule still exists. I've seen white people get up there and speak about whatever they wanted to talk about, whether it's on the agenda or not. I've seen them go over 3 minutes. I've seen one person go on for 10 minutes at one council meeting. Nothing was said. And so these folks, these Democrats, force us to look for change. Obviously, you got a black mayor. That's something to be proud of, you would think. You want to be supportive of that. You have black council members. You want to be supportive of that. But, there's a saying, every brother ain't a brother and every sister ain't a sister. They're not representing our interests. When is one city council member or mayor in Peekskill going to say, I'm going to be a voice for that community? I'm going to revitalize that community. We have millions of dollars construction going on all over Peekskill. You couldn't find 2 jobs from Bowman Towers. I had arranged for Teamsters and electricians unions to meet with residents of Bowman Towers and get them in the unions. Nobody in City Hall would support that. They wouldn't even give us a place to meet and do it. So we're moving on. We're looking for people to run in a primary. And I want to talk about this Rob Scott thing, and I got to be mindful that people outside of Peekskill don't know who he is. Rob Scott is on the Peekskill City Council. He's also on the Housing Authority Board. Rob Scott was just indicted for election fraud. Apparently, people signed his petitions who shouldn't have signed them. I mean, we know that this goes on a lot. We also know that a lot of dead people end up signing petitions also. But here's the thing about Rob Scott. Now, the former Peekskill mayor, Andre Rainey, he sent out a picture of him and Rob Scott. I think it was on Instagram. Somebody screen captured and sent it to me. And on this picture of the two of them, he wrote, "When they needed someone black, they were there for you." Think about the implications. Let's see who stands for you now. I think you just confirmed everything I've been saying for 30 freaking years. When they needed someone black, not when the black community needed someone black. When they needed someone black to advance their racist agenda, Rob Scott was there for him. All right? That's what this means. And I was, when someone sent it to me, I was shocked to see a black Democrat admitting that you're tokens. Maybe they don't know they're admitting it. But now, Candace Owens, O.J. Simpson, rest in peace, you cannot just be black sometimes. You can't be black when you get in trouble. You got to be black before you get in trouble, and we're there for you. But now that you're in trouble, you want to be black? I'm sorry, it don't work like that. Think about that. When they needed someone black, not when our community needed a black voice. When they needed someone black, you were there for them. Selling us out. Going along with mass evictions. I can't stand with you, bro. You you can't do what they do. They chew you up and spit you out. Once you can't come home when you do that. God bless you. Now, I want to remind people also, right on my page, follow me on Facebook, Darrell Davis, Darrell. Get your friends, family, because we're gonna bring compassion and integrity back to peak skill government. And for those of you in White Plains who contacted me, Greenberg, we're happy to do what we've always done, Committee for Justice. We've always gone outside of our community because you ask us to. New Rochelle, you invite us in, we're there. All right, but join my email list. It's pinned right on my page so that we can send out an email blast. We got to tell people, hey, we need you to call the U.S. Attorney and demand an investigation into the Kiley Center project. That's where your power is. Be a part of something bigger. Now, two more things I want to talk about. One is the Trump factor. And, it's important for me to say this because if you look at my posts on Facebook, yeah, I'm laughing a little bit too much about, rappers saying that they're going to support Trump, and I'm laughing a little bit too much about black leaders across the country saying, you know what, maybe we need to talk to Trump. And the reason I'm laughing is, again, because for 30 years I've been warning. This is not me bashing the Democratic Party. Understand the difference. I am telling the Democratic Party to be who you say you are. You take our money, you take our votes, and you abandon us. And you sell us out, and you politically abuse us. Be who you say you are, or you're going to lose the black vote. And here we are in 2024. Every poll says black people are done with the Democratic Party. We're not the reason that Trump might win. You're the reason Trump might win. You can't keep coming to a community and saying you have to vote for us because the other side is worse. Or you have to vote for us because Donald Trump, if Donald Trump gets in, things would be worse for black people. You're talking to a community who's getting nothing anyway. We got nothing to lose. We're homeless. We're being evicted. We're jobless. And we're voting for you. And we got a Democratic president. We had Obama. Democrats controlling the Senate and sometimes controlling both houses. And we're still stuck. People are just getting off the boat. $1,000 to buy whatever food you want. And by the way, people who get SNAP, I look at these memes and these snobs saying they shouldn't be buying lobster with that. Why not? Food is food. Why not? That's your being brainwashed against poor people or working class people. And by the way, brothers and sisters, you ain't doing nothing wrong. If you're in eviction court right now, you're not doing nothing wrong. If you're homeless or jobless, you're not doing anything wrong. You've been sold out by the presidency and the Congress. There's a book called America, the Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And it gives names of this congressman took this money from IBM and this one took it from Microsoft. And they tell you who's owned. And they're no longer looking out for your interests. We have to make them do that. We have to know that if they don't support us, we run somebody else. So I see people talking about Martin Luther King died for your right to vote. Now these people who are saying that's not why Martin Luther King died, but he certainly did not die for us to show up and vote for a freaking racist that's trying to evict us. Martin Luther King taught us critical thinking. Dr. King talked about integrity and courage. Dr. King was hated in his lifetime. Before they killed him, he wasn't even allowed to preach in certain black churches. He was isolated before they killed him and hated. And then you recycled him and gave him back to us. King didn't just say, I have a dream. He talked about police brutality too. They don't tell you about that. He talked about housing, the Poor People's Campaign. King went in places that other leaders didn't have the courage to go into. And we have to get back to that. So when I talk about the Democrats, I look back on the 60s, and I don't ask the question, who killed Malcolm X? I ask the question, why was he killed? What was he doing and saying that was such a threat to the power structure? And these are the questions and conversations that we have to have today. Because everybody's got a bill. Everybody's got a right. Everybody's got human rights. Everybody's got laws that if you attack this person or this group, you're going to jail. Everybody but black people. So we got to start asking, what is the agenda? And so when I bash the Democrats, as some of y'all say I'm bashing the Democrats, I'm not saying vote the other side, although in some cases we should. What I am saying is that you take our votes, you take our money, you have to give back to us like you do every other group. We're moving on, and you've been warned, and we're at that place. So don't tell me that if Donald Trump gets elected, it's going to be worse for black people. It's already bad for black people, no matter who's in. You have the power to change that. I mean, again, look right here in Peekskill. Millions of dollars of construction. How many jobs went to our community? And by law, they're supposed to. And beyond the law, by what's right, they're supposed to. And it doesn't happen. And so don't tell me, oh, well, you got a black mayor, you should be proud. Yeah, black, proud, and homeless. That ain't my freaking goal. That is not our goal here. Peekskill Housing Authority. Someone forwarded me, the big lie. The big lie. Those people need to pay their rent. The big lie. And this person, again, anytime I'm talking, and I've done radio for 30 years now. I started on WLNA, WBNR, WVOX, live talk radio. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, put them in the comments section.
Someone just said you should run for mayor.
I should run for mayor?
Kyle Lyra.
The only thing I'm running for right now is my life, and we'll talk about that another time. When I do live radio, and by the way, thank you for that comment. When I do live radio, in my mind, and my radio shows have always been the top, either number one or in the top 3 talk shows in the region, or on a station or the region. And I'm always, in my mind, my radio shows and this Facebook Live is an extension of the movement for me. And so when I'm talking to an audience, in my mind, I'm talking to 3 groups of people. I'm talking to our supporters, Committee for Justice supporters, Darrell Davis supporters of the movement. I'm talking to you. Another group I'm talking to are the haters. The monkeys in the trees. They're up there where it's safe, doing nothing, throwing their crap down on us who are down there in the trenches. We're never going to change their minds. But I love them because they help my ratings. I had one lady, young white girl, say to me, she was an intern at WLNA, and she used to come in every Sunday morning and intern. And one morning, she was like 15 years old, she says to me, she says, my dad hates, just out of nowhere, my dad hates you. A big smile. And I said, what? Said, yeah, he gets up and listens every morning. He says, well, let me turn on the radio and see what the assholes talk. And wherever you want to help my ratings, it's all right with it's all right with me, So I got the supporters and I got the haters, but my target generally, there are good people out there listening with bad information. I'm talking to you. So when you say those people need to pay their rent, I want you to know that the issue has never been that those people aren't paying their rent. The issue is that Peekskill Mayor Vivian McKenzie, Councilman Rob Scott, and the rest of them have appointed people to the Housing Authority Board because they are beholden to real estate interests that they took money from. Dwight Douglas, Dwight Douglas, Peekskill City Councilman, took money, was on the Housing Authority Board for a while. He's not on anymore, but he invited all his friends and cousins and the wife of this one to be on the board, and all of these freaking unethical relationships to get rid of Bowman Towers. You know, and so they changed the policy so that which would lead to mass evictions. And by the way, I get press releases from HUD. You know what HUD does like every month? They put money out there for home ownership, for housing authority residents. Home ownership, financial literacy. I had somebody call me and tell me that they've been trying to teach financial literacy in the community room at Bowman Towers for over a year, and the housing authority refuses them access because they don't want you to learn financial literacy. They don't want you to have a union job. They don't want you to be a homeowner. They want you out. They don't care where you end up. They don't care if you end up hanging from a rope. They're ruthless and they don't care. And so the issue is not why aren't those people paying their rent? The issue is why isn't the housing authority accepting rent? I talk to housing authority directors from all over the region. I call them, they say you have to take partial rent. If you're a housing authority, you have to take partial rent. You have some poor people there, you have unemployed people there, you have veterans, you have senior citizens. You have to take partial rent. Only Peekskill Housing Authority, under the misleadership of the Peekskill Democrats, are they doing everything possible to mass evict people. All right? So stop saying those people need to pay their rent. Now, I'm going to wind this down, but again, I want to remind people, join the email list, get involved, tell your friends about this program, and
Daryl,
yes.
Someone asked, have they begun to evict people?
They have scores of people in eviction court right now as we speak, and just to show you how horrible it is, because I sat in on a couple of sessions recently, and the housing authority attorney should be fired. This man, during the moratorium on evictions, when the governor put out a moratorium, no evictions, COVID, people lost their jobs, no evictions for this period of time. This lawyer, who took an oath to uphold the law, who was an officer of the court, said at a housing board meeting, we're going to find a way around that and evict people. That's a disgrace. That housing board should have fired him on the spot. Because, and by the way, we're filing formal complaints against him for that to the bar, to the Committee on Judicial Misconduct, and others. And it's a part of our complaint that they're not following the law. And so they have people in court now, unnecessarily, where they could easily give them repayment plans. People who have been there for generations. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. They should have been homeowners by now if the housing authority was doing its job. If the housing authority was bringing in programs that help them, first-time home buyers mortgages and programs. Those seminars should have been going on all along. If the unions were allowed to come in and give jobs. But this housing authority has always been hostile to the residents there. That's why they have the police spying on us. All right? So not only are they dragging people into court and attempting to evict them, and kudos to Judge Johnson. He's not going along with it. He is not going along with it. I give him a lot of credit for that, because he was appointed by the Democrats for the purpose of going along with the mass eviction. And this man is not doing it. Some of y'all might remember, I was about to beat him up at a council meeting.
I beat him up.
He started it, and you can Google it, it's still all over the news, but it's not as bad as it sounds. But he's doing a great job. And I ran into him, we had a little thing at a city council meeting. I ran into him like a year later at a supermarket. We turned the corner, we were face to face. And he froze, I froze. I said, bro, it's time we shake hands. You're doing a great job as a judge, and I appreciate what you're doing. He said, thank you, Darryl. It means a lot to me. And so we made the peace, but he's not going along with the plan. Now, that's not true of everybody. The Democrats in Westchester now are appointing black people as judges to carry out their racist agendas. When I went to New Rochelle, the tenants down there asked me to come down there and help them get organized. New Rochelle has districts, so the council member for that district was at that meeting. But someone else, a black man who was on the council, I'm not going to call his name because I got no beef with him. He wants to play the political game. He was there, and I asked him, I said, bro, what do you, I knew him because he was on my radio. So what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just here to observe. All right, well, this black councilman who was not a part of that district ended up being appointed a judge and going along with the evictions. So they're looking for black people to appoint to judges right now. It's one of the dirty games the Democrats are playing today. So they can't say that it's racist, even though it's a Democrat being appointed and doing the mass evicting. And so the other thing that this lawyer is doing is he's coming in there with inflated numbers. I've looked at ledgers. You can't evict people for late fees. You can't evict people. They're charging like $10 for a light bulb now. If they change a light bulb, they charge you, so 2 light bulbs, that's $20. $90, was it $40 if you have an air conditioner? So they put parking fees, they load up all these fees that by law don't belong there. And this lawyer is doing it anyway. And then it gets adjourned and they come back and the lawyer says, I need more time, Your Honor. This guy is milking the system. He's a freaking bum. And he's doing nothing but taking government money, traumatizing families unnecessarily. Who's responsible for this guy? Peekskill Mayor Vivian McKenzie, Peekskill City Council Member Rob Scott, and the rest of them. Dwight Douglas, because they appoint these housing commissioners to enforce these policies, these attacks, these undermining people. The tenants at Bowman Towers started a garden, beautifying their home. You know what the former director did? Ordered the flowers to be pulled up. Who should have to live like that? Under terror, under bullying. You had one maintenance worker knock on the door and let himself in. Now this woman was in her bra and underwear. And she said something to him, and he was like, you don't own this, we own this. This apartment belongs to the government. And see, that's the climate that exists. And had I been there and had that been my daughter, it would have been a different outcome. But this is the climate that comes out of Peekskill City government. And I'm saying these things because they knock on your door at Bowman Towers, District 1. No, vote for me, the first black. Ken Jenkins is getting ready to run for county executive. He wants to be the first black. I got some things to say about him when the time comes. But they're duping you. The racist Democratic Party is giving you black skin to vote for with nothing in return. And so to answer the question, they're dragging people in. They started sending 14-day letters and letters of eviction during the moratorium. This attorney said that he's going to break the law. And yet, he's still there. Because this is what they want. You only have what they want. If they didn't want it, he would have been gone. If they didn't want it, they would have appointed compassionate people to the housing board. There were compassionate people. Reverend Stephanie Graham used to be on the Housing Authority board. She quit. She quit because of all the shenanigans and the backroom deals and the white men on the board who were taking money and dealing with developers having meetings without her. Another Sister McNeil who was on the Housing Authority board. And she put in her resume, that resume sat there for months. And I called Ramon on the city council, who used to return my calls, but now that his people got my colleagues, and I think he thinks I'm mad at him. Doesn't return my calls anymore. I called him and I said, what's holding this appointment up? Well, I talked to the mayor and they think that she's going to be too friendly to the tenants. excuse me, that's what you want. You want to help people get on their feet. You want to help people be gainful. That's what you want. You don't want mass evictions unless you have another agenda. So this sister ended up quitting in frustration for the same reason. Secret meetings, votes without her, decisions being made. This housing authority has gone forward, even though Wilder Balter, who I told you before, he was given the Kiley Center contract to convert the Kiley Center into the Boys and Girls Club, even though he's under federal indictment and it disqualifies him from that. This housing authority director said, well, I'm probably going to sign the contract anyway. So they flaunt the law here. Why did they do that? I have a theory. There are powerful people connected to Peekskill who have also taken money from these developers, and they're all on the same page. Gentrification is the wave, the policy of the Democratic Party. If you look at people who's funding the Republicans, who's funding the Democrats, real estate companies are always like in the top 3. And so you look at all these river towns, they're getting rid of public housing. There's no reason or excuse for that, except they sold us out. And they make it impossible for you to have a safe, clean home. Mm-hmm. You know, I hear all of this bullshit all the time. Oh, well, you know, get rid of them. They're pissing in the hallways. Well, let me stop you right there. Again, I had said before that back in 1984, yeah, I've been doing this a long freaking time. Stevie Hammonds and myself cleaned up Bowman Towers. From there, and we walked the steps. Excuse me, you live here? No. Well, you got to go. You know, people who don't, the first thing they do is get rid of the security so that people can come in there who don't live there and start defacing the property, pissing in the stairs. They get rid of the security. Now, the residents are afraid to complain because of retaliation. All right? So that's the first thing they do. We put security back in place. Not only did Stevie and I clean up that building, got rid of people who don't belong there, I got on a plane to Washington, D.C. as chairman of the Housing Authority, came back with money for security, hired residents as security guards, hired a resident as a laundry room attendant, had 4 tenants, 2 elected by the tenants and 2 appointed by the city of Peekskill. I used my political influence with then Mayor Pataki to have 2 tenants appointed, myself and Joyce Lockett from Dunbar Heights. So we had 4 tenants running the housing authority, and it's never been run better before or since because the tenants had a stake. They weren't being attacked. They weren't being treated like criminals and like inmates. And they had floor captains who a couple times a day would go out and sweep their floor. That's how you turn a community around. Not mass evict, not bully, not slander, not smear, but that's what's going on in Peekskill. And we're going to run our own candidates. We're going to take other actions as we see fit. Are there any more questions before I wind this down?
No.
Alrighty. All right, folks. You know, we had, this had really started out to be just one Facebook Live, but the response has been insane. I'm being invited to go on other people's podcasts. I'm being asked for meetings to meet with different people or whatever the case may be. But I want people to be mindful that this is not about me. Yeah, I'm carrying the ball. A lot of you don't know what that means. You know, this is Saturday morning. There's other things I'd rather be doing, like even still being in bed. But this is what we have to do as a community and as a people. So I want to remind you that this Facebook Live is an extension of the movement. This is an attempt to empower our communities all up and down the Hudson Valley or wherever the Committee for Justice and myself is invited. Now, before I sign off, I want to say something about the Committee for Justice. Now, when the Committee for Justice is invited all over, when Al Sharpton ran for Senate, he asked Committee for Justice to do his security. When Nelson Mandela came to the United States, and that was back in the 90s or somewhere, late 90s, the organizers called me and said, hey, can some of your folks come down and act as marshals? So the Committee for Justice is respected all over the region. Why? Because we don't judge. We stand up. But what we do, there's a price to pay. And so when I say that, you know, there's other things I'd rather be doing, you don't know the flip side of Committee for Justice members being arrested, being retaliated against, being evicted, losing their jobs. You know one side of it. So I say all of that to say there's leadership and constituency. And the community, we're going to ask more of you because we carry too much of the burden. Yeah, well, we're winning. Well, yeah, Committee for Justice is toppled according to a state senator. We're known for getting rid of government officials who don't belong in office. And we have toppled more government officials than anybody in the history of Westchester County. But we pay a price. And you know some of my story, but you don't know all of it. My kids know a lot more than you know. They know a lot more than you know what it is to have a father whose life was threatened, or who they see being dragged out on TV, shirt ripped off by rough police officers, or wondering why we're not eating so well this month because they didn't know that my income was retaliated against again. Now, why am I saying this? Because I'm one person, but there are other people in the same boat. You got to step up. You know, when Nipsey Hussle died, there was memes everywhere. There's a Nipsey Hussle in your community. Everybody shared it, but how many people sent $5 to this person? We got to do better as a community. We can't send our warriors out there and they come home broken and you don't help because these people retaliate. They'll try to destroy everything they can about any independent black voices. It ain't just Malcolm and Angela Davis, and it's not just them. Every time King marched, a whole lot of people you never heard of went to jail with him. Didn't make the news, lost their housing, lost their jobs. Constituency, you have responsibility also, brothers and sisters. So get on the email list, because I'm going to send an email and say, I need you to call your congressman. I need you to write a letter. I need you to send $10 so we can go to Washington, D.C. and fight for you. That's it. And I'm going to wind this down. No more questions?
No. But CeCe Sonberg said, thank you for your continuing work in the community. You never gave up on us.
Thank you, sis. And like you and others, y'all haven't given up on us either. And I have to say how humbling it is and almost embarrassing for me, because I know a lot of y'all don't believe that I'm actually shy. But it's humbling to be out in the community and people run up and don't make that face. I am shy. It's humbling, the thanks, the appreciation, you know. So it's a two-way. I have amazing people in my life, and I'm grateful for that. So we're going to wind down. I started off by saying that this was meant to be a one-time thing. When the mayor threatened me with arrest for trying to ask her to appoint people to the Housing Authority Board, shut me down. The police came. The police came up one aisle. I ran down the other, out the building, and made my escape. But it looks like this is going to turn into a weekly thing. And I'm excited about it. I hope other people are, because we want to grow as communities, as people. We want everything that everybody else is given. We don't want a handout. We want an opportunity. There's a difference. And always, always remember, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Thank you.